Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something that literally affects every single one of us out on the roads. We're going to demystify Swedish traffic laws, specifically looking at how cars need to interact with unprotected road users. Whether you're sweating over your upcoming theory exam or you've been driving for decades, mastering this infrastructure isn't just about checking a box on a test, it's an absolutely crucial matter of safety, and honestly, a strict legal obligation. So we're going to decode the signs, the paint on the asphalt, and the structural rules that govern Swedish crossings. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's kick things off with a classic driving myth. Why shouldn't you wave a pedestrian across the road? I mean, if you're trying to be a polite, courteous driver, gesturing for someone to cross feels like the nicest thing to do, right? Well, legally and practically speaking, it is actually highly dangerous and totally counterintuitive.
Here's the thing. The official guidance points out that waving creates this incredibly dangerous false sense of security. Think about it. When you wave a pedestrian across, they might relax, trust your signal, and just step out blindly without scanning the other lanes. Imagine a fast-moving car coming up right beside you that has absolutely zero intention of stopping. It's a recipe for disaster. So instead of waving, the absolute safest habit is to establish direct eye contact. Look at them, let them look at you, bring your car to a safe, predictable stop, and let them make their own independent decision to cross when they know it's safe.
To make sense of this whole urban jungle, we're going to systematically break things down. Today, we're covering 1. Pedestrians, rules and safety. 2. Navigating footpaths and sidewalks. 3. The standard bicycle passage. 4. Absolute priority, bicycle crossings. And 5. Bicycle paths and a theory test.
All right, Section 1, Pedestrians, Rules and Safety. Let's see how the rules define our basic interactions on foot.
So, how do we actually know we're at a pedestrian crossing? You are looking for two specific markers. First, the official blue and white road sign, known as B3. And second, those unmistakable white stripes painted right on the asphalt, known as M15 markings. When you spot these together, you are entering a zone of high legal obligation.
Now, here is where it gets really interesting. The Swedish legal definition of a pedestrian is way broader than you might think. You're probably just looking out for people walking, but legally? You need to be actively watching for folks operating manual or electric wheelchairs, people cruising on roller skates or roller skis, kids on toy vehicles, and get this, even someone out on a winter kick sled. It also includes anyone actively walking a dismounted bicycle or moped. Basically, if they're pushing it, they're a pedestrian.
You've also got to remember this vital distinction between controlled and uncontrolled crossings. At a controlled crossing, the ones with traffic lights, if someone steps out on a green light but your light suddenly changes, you must stay put until they clear the road. But at uncontrolled crossings, you have a strict legal obligation to visibly yield early. If someone has stepped out or even looks like they're clearly about to, you have to communicate your intent by smoothly reducing your speed well before you hit that boundary line.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Section 2, Navigating Footpaths and Sidewalks.
The manual highlights that a footpath, or gångbana, doesn't always look the same everywhere. Sometimes you get the explicit blue footpath sign, D5, but a lot of times it's just implied by the curb. As a driver, you are only ever allowed to cross a footpath if you're entering or exiting an adjacent property, like a driveway. And when you do that, you have an absolute obligation to yield to all pedestrians moving along it. Even if the path just sort of flattens out at a junction, you absolutely must yield if you're cutting across their designated space. No exceptions.
Let's keep moving. Section 3. The standard bicycle passage.
You'll recognize a bicycle passage by those big, square road marking blocks, the M16s, painted across the lane. The general rule here is actually that cyclists crossing an uncontrolled passage legally have to give way to approaching cars. They're supposed to check for safety and slow down. But, and this is a massive but, the manual outlines the turning exception. If you, the driver, are turning at an intersection or exiting a roundabout, the whole dynamic flips. You must proceed at a low speed and give all cyclists a full opportunity to cross safely.
Now we reach the spot where drivers make the most dangerous mistakes. Section 4, Absolute Priority, Bicycle Crossings. Please pay super close attention to this distinction, because it's a real game changer. Like we just said, at a standard passage, cyclists generally yield to cars driving straight. But a bicycle crossing? That is a heavily structured piece of infrastructure designed to give cyclists absolute priority over motor vehicles. You'll know for sure it's a crossing because it has 3 unconditional markers: the official road sign B8, those M16 square blocks, and the painted giveaway triangles facing the car lanes. When you see that combo, you have an absolute statutory obligation to yield to both cyclists and Class 2 mopeds. When you look at the visual difference between the two, it's pretty striking. On a standard passage, you literally just see those square blocks, but look at a legally binding bicycle crossing. Notice those vital painted triangles? The giveaway lines painted right on the asphalt in your lane? Those triangles are actively demanding that you, the driver, give way.
Because these bicycle crossings grant absolute priority to unprotected riders, the law recognizes just how devastating a high-speed collision would be. So the environment around a true bicycle crossing literally has to be structurally engineered to physically limit your car to a maximum speed of 30 kilometers per hour. Usually, that means a physical speed hump. Oh, and surprise, all these statutory protections apply identically and just as strictly to people riding electric scooters, too.
All right, let's wrap this up with Section 5, bicycle paths, and a theory test. Time to put all this into practice.
A bicycle path is marked by signs D4 or D7, and it's basically an independent road just for bucks. Normally they end right before a junction and turn into one of those crossings or passages we just talked about, but sometimes a continuous bicycle path genuinely crosses an uninterrupted car street without any painted markings at all. These are incredibly tough to spot unless you're literally staring at municipal zoning blueprints. Because it's so ambiguous, the Swedish Transport Agency advises drivers to always err on the side of caution. Just reduce your speed and let the cyclist pass. Better safe than sorry.
Okay, let's put you in the hot seat right now, with an exact question ripped straight from the official theory exam. Are you obliged to give way to road users who are already on or are about to enter a marked bicycle crossing featuring sign B8?
So, here are your options to navigate this scenario. Is it A, yes, to both cyclists and Class 2 mopeds? B, yes, but only to cyclists? C, no, because of a roundabout? Or D, no, but you just have to adapt your speed? Think back to those absolute priority rules we just covered.
And the correct answer is A, yes, you must give way to cyclists and drivers of Class 2 mopeds. That sign B8, which tells you it's a legally binding bicycle crossing, imposes an explicit and absolute statutory obligation to yield fully to anyone on or even about to step onto that crossing.
Option D is actually a really common trap for students. It's incorrect because simply adapting your speed is not enough. Adapting speed is what you do at a normal passage. But at a marked B8 crossing, the law demands an absolute yield. You have to be prepared to stop your car completely.
I want to leave you with this final kind of provocative thought. Traffic laws are defined by very specific combinations of signs and paint, right? And sure, memorizing these rules is absolutely required to pass your exam. But true safety out there, that is defined entirely by your vigilance. When you're behind the wheel, are you truly reading the infrastructure? Actually noticing those structural speed humps, the M16 blocks, those painted triangles, or are you just staring blindly at the asphalt? Actively searching for those structural clues is what makes you a predictable driver, and ultimately, it's what will actually save lives. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and stay safe out there on the roads.